Hey everybody, today we're going to be going through how to model and rig this little robot, including a cool setup so that we can easily animate his face. The project files will be available on my Patreon if you're interested, and I'm also excited to announce that this video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. But for now, let's hop into modeling. Alright, so to start with our scene, I'm actually going to have a little reference image up here of the character that I want to create. And I'm going to zoom in here on the default cube. And I'm going to start by scaling it on the Z-axis a little bit because I want it to kind of have a rectangular look like the monitor over here. And do a tiny bit more there. I'm going to switch to the side view here, and I'm just going to add a loop cut down the center. I'm going to come here to the back, select both these faces. Then I'm just going to extrude those out just a little bit there. And then I'm going to switch to vertices, come into wireframe mode, grab this one up top, move it on the y-axis here, and I'm just trying to get that subtle slope in the back there. And I actually want to exaggerate that slope a bit more, so I'm just going to grab these and bring that out a little bit there. If you're struggling to follow along, I have all my keyboard shortcuts here, and this is recorded in 60 FPS, so you can slow down the video if you need to. Alright, and bringing that forward, I feel like I kind of have a satisfactory monitor shape that I want there. So what I want to do is I want them to make them look kind of friendly, so I'm actually going to bevel these corners out. So I'm going to do that with the bevel modifier. Add a bevel there, and I'm just going to crank up the width a bit, and you'll notice that if I grab here it's not showing up. That's because I have clamp overlap off, and of course I don't want that much. Let's lower that to 0.1 and start there. We can see that these vertices in the back are causing a bit more overlap than I want, because they're so close together. So I'm actually just going to hop back into edit mode and grab those vertices and bring them out a little bit further. There you go, and that way we don't have any overlap there. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a couple segments there, and then I'm going to right click, hit shade smooth, and then I'm going to apply. And now I want to start adding some of these smaller features. And the reason I wanted to apply this bevel modifier first is because I don't want such a large bevel on some of these smaller features. So let's hop back in and let's grab these faces up here. Just going to use the C key and grab those. I'm going to press I to inset there. And then I'm just going to bring that screen back a little bit. And then I'm going to inset again, and then I'm going to extrude back forward, and this will serve as our screen later, so that's kind of a good start for our screen there. And I want to go ahead and I want to add a little crease here on the side and maybe a little power button. So what I'm going to do is switch back to side view and kind of decide where I want my crease to be. I think I want it to be right around here, and then I'll grab another edge loop there. Control R is the keyboard shortcut for edge loop if you do not know. You can also grab the edge loop tool over here. So now I'm in face selection mode. Let's go ahead and grab these couple faces here. And then I'm going to rotate out, and I'm just going to extrude those in just ever so slightly. And you can see that I kind of freaked out the normals there, so hopefully we can fix that in a second. And then I'm actually going to come up here and I'm going to add another edge loop and another. And I'm just creating this little power button right now. Let's go ahead, maybe grab an edge loop there, grab an edge loop there. And then I'll grab that face, and I'm actually going to extrude it in, then inset it in, and then extrude it back out. And I want that just to maybe poke out past the side just a little bit more. So move that out on the x-axis there. And great, aside from the crappy normals, this looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is come down here to the normals, turn on auto smooth, and then I'm going to turn this up to 40. And with that, I should have a pretty good shape to start with my monitor. And I actually think I'm going to make mine a little bit shorter, so I'm going to switch back to edit mode, come in here to wireframe and grab these vertices and move him for it there. Of course, you can make this any shape you want. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do is add another little bevel modifier in here so that we can add a little bit more detail to these edges around some of these objects. So let's go up here and add a bevel modifier, and you can see that at first it's going to screw with the normals and we're going to get all this ugly smoothing. So to fix that, let's go ahead and add a couple segments here, and already that's looking a little bit better. And then we'll click harden normals, and what that's going to do is use the auto smoothing data to harden the normals and kind of get rid of some of those artifacts that we saw around there. But you can see that it's causing an issue with our previous bevel. So if we go back to this modifier and we change our limit method to angle, we can then change this to 40 degrees. And we can see now that we had the same smoothness before, but we're also getting smaller bevels on some of our smaller details there. Now for now, that's all the detail I'm going to add, but if you'd like, you can go ahead and add a couple more creases and buttons and things like that to your character. So let's go ahead and add a glass screen to our robot. So if we jump back here into edit mode, I'm going to switch to face selection, and I'm going to grab these couple faces here. I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate, and then P and hit selection, and what that will do is create a new object based off of that selection. So if I come up here, rename this screen, we can see that we have some Z fighting here, so we'll just grab it and move it out slightly on the Y, and I'm going to just / in there so that I can focus on this. The first thing I want to do is go back into edit mode, and I don't need this geometry right now, so I'm just going to click edges, grab these, and hit X and just dissolve the edges there. Now we have a plane kind of in the size and proportion of our screen that we can get started with. Let's go back out to object mode. We'll get rid of the bevel modifier because that came over when we separated it. Let's add a subdivision surface modifier. And as we can see, this is a pretty crappy start. So just going to up the viewport to 2 there. We'll go back into edit mode. Let's grab this face and just extrude it back just slightly. And that's just so that we have some thickness to the glass. But of course, we don't want it looking like this. We want our screen to kind of bulb out like an old CRT monitor as drawn over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch to edge selection mode. We're going to grab each of these 4 corners. And then we're going to come up here to edge, and by default it should be Shift D, but we can do edge crease and nothing's going to happen. But if you drag left and right, you can change the sharpness of your edges. So I'm just going to drag all the way to the left, and what that's going to do is sharpen those edges so that when we have our subdivision modifier on there, it sees these edges as sharp still. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything, right click and subdivide, and then I'm going to switch to vertex mode, grab that middle vertex and just kind of pull that out, and you can see we're starting to get that old kind of CRT monitor effect where it just bubbles out a bit further than everything. I just want a little bit, but you can kind of exaggerate that effect as much as you want. And because it added this extra edge loop here, it's now kind of snapped everything to the edge. So let's go ahead, exit isolation mode, and we'll go into front view. We're just going to scale this up so that we see it kind of reach all of our 4 corners there. I think it could be a little bit taller, so I'm just going to scale that up a tiny bit more. And then we're going to come in here and we're going to hit G and Y and move that back. We want it to intersect the edges here, but we don't want it to intersect with our actual screen inside. So we just want to be careful those 2 things aren't intersecting with one another. To finish this up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this robot, going to apply the bevel, I'm going to grab the screen, I'm going to apply the subdivision surface, and then I'm going to select this robot and hit Control J, and that's going to put them in the same mesh. And now we have a monitor section for our little robot complete, and we can move on to doing the tank treads. But first, let's hear a word from our sponsors. So let's talk about why you should check out Surfshark's awesome VPN service. I had a great experience with it, but you may be asking yourself, why do I even need a VPN? So let's start there. VPNs allow you to securely connect to the internet and hide your real IP address and display the IP address of the server that you're connected to. Because of this, it's safer. Public Wi-Fi is a goldmine for hackers. Use Surfshark to protect your connection and hide your IP address. They take their security encryption seriously, and with their strict no-log policy, you can ensure that nobody will ever have access to your information. You can also quickly switch between different countries and access geo-restricted content. Their clean web feature blocks ads and helps protect you from malware, and they even have a blind search function letting you see purely organic results when you search the internet. Setting up Surfshark is as easy as picking the app you want and downloading it from the website. I prefer the Chrome add-on as it fits neatly into the Chrome browser, but they have an app for every device you can imagine. This is why Surfshark is the best. It's the only VPN to offer one account to use on unlimited number of devices. Also, the owner sent a picture of his Millennium Falcon tattoo in an email, so that's pretty cool too. Use my code to get 83% off plus an extra 3 months for free. At that rate, it's basically free altogether. Surfshark also offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk to try it out for yourself. Link is in the description below with a code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this monitor and I'm just going to hide it. I'm going to go into the top view. I'm going to add a cube. I'm going to add a curve circle. I'm going to grab this cube, go into edit mode, select everything, and just scale it way down there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into the top view mode, going to add a circle, I'm going to add a cube, going to scale that cube down, I'm going to hit Control A and apply scale. Then I'm going to go ahead and add a modifier to this cube. I'm going to add an array, and then I'm going to add a curve. And then on that curve, I'm going to select that curve right there. And let's name that Bezier circle to tank track 1. And this cube we will name tread. So what we're going to do now is we're going to up the count here, and you'll see that that will make it go all around the curve. If we snap here into edit mode, we can begin modifying this so that it looks more like a tank track. So I'm going to grab this cube, I'm going to subdivide it, and I'm just going to bump that up to 2. And then we can kind of start playing with it. Now, you can make your tank track look like however you want, but I'm just going to kind of do a traditional tank track. So I'm going to grab this, scale it in on the Y. And so that I know what direction to go, I'm going to go ahead and click this button here on the curve modifier, which will display it in edit mode. Then I'm going to grab these 3 faces here, and I'm just going to extrude those out just a little bit. And with that, I have a tank track kind of going around there. I think I actually want it to be a little bit wider, so I'm going to grab those and scale on the Z. And now we kind of have a wider tank track. For the sake on not having too dense a geometry, I'm going to switch into edit mode, and I'm going to grab these 2 edge loops and just devolve those edges so that we don't have to have too heavy of geometry in our scene. And with that, we have a kind of tank tread ready to go all the way around. So I'm just going to up the count there. And it may not match perfectly. You can spend time modifying the mesh to do so, but for the sake of the time of this tutorial, I'm just going to let it overlap a little bit. It shouldn't be noticeable in motion. I'm going to go back out to object mode. I'm going to grab our tank track curve, and I'm going to go into edit mode. And now we can modify what this curve looks like. So I want this kind of shape here, this kind of trapezoid shape. So I'm going to grab this one. I'm just going to bring it here on the X. And grab this one and bring it in on the X to kind of flatten those tank treads out. So you can go ahead and you can grab these points and you can change them to be whatever shape you want. You can even select them all, right click, subdivide, add more points so you have more control. For the sake of ease, I'm just going to leave mine here to the default. I'm going to switch back out to the object mode here, and I'm going to grab this and I'm going to start this array back at 1, and then I'm just going to click that until I get around, because since we changed the shape of our circle, we don't need quite that many. And there you can see I have a pretty even distribution I'm happy with. Now this next order of events is a very specific order that you need to follow. So what we're going to do to create a tank tread rig is we're going to apply this array. Then we're going to take this box and we're going to select the curve, and then we're going to parent this to the curve and keep our transform. Now when we move the curve around, it will move our tank tread around. Then what we're going to do is we're going to rotate the cube and the curve together. Then what we're going to do is we're going to grab them and rotate them 90 degrees on the y-axis. If we unhide our monitor here and drag this over on the x-axis, we will see that we're now kind of on our correct orientation. So let's go here into side view, and we'll just reposition that curve until we get it in a place we like. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of plop it there. And I'm actually going to make this tank tread a bit thinner. So I'm going to go back into edit mode. I'm going to grab this and kind of scale it in on the Z here and grab these to kind of adjust so that we don't have this kind of weird lump there. And there we go. I'm pretty happy with that placement of the tracks. Let's just grab that curve there and make sure it's not intersecting in the side of the monitor. I want it close but not intersecting. What we're going to do is we're going to go over to front view and we're going to rig our monitor first. So let's go ahead and add an armature here. I'm going to switch to wireframe mode so we can see it. Switch to edit mode. I'm going to grab that. Going to bring it way down here. And this is going to be our root bone, so I'm just going to make that really tiny there. Then I'm going to extrude this up on the Z-axis. It's important to stay organized whenever you're rigging because it's a very complex process. So we'll just grab this bone, call it root, preferably without caps lock on. And then we're going to grab this top bone here, and we'll name this one body. Now we'll switch out into object mode and we will switch to the side view and we will make sure that this is actually centered up on our monitor there. Then what we're going to do is go back to top view. We're going to go to mesh and circle and we're going to scale that up so that it encompasses kind of all of our little robot character there. Go back to front view. Let's maybe grab that, move it down here so it's kind of at the bottom of everything there. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab this armature here, switch into pose mode, grab this bottom mode. We're going to switch back out to object mode, grab this circle, hit Control P and hit Object Keep Transform. And now with this, we should be able to move around our whole armature there. Now we're going to grab the monitor, going to grab the armature, going to hit Control P. We're going to do with empty groups. Now we're going to grab our monitor, go into edit mode. We're going to select everything. We're going to come down here to our object data properties and we're going to go to body and we're going to assign everything to body. Now if we come back here to object mode, switch to solid view here, and what I'm going to do is actually grab this armature and I'm going to go down to viewport display and I'm going to do in front so that we can see that the entire time. If we switch to pose mode and we grab this, we can now move our monitor around. So now we need to parent our tank tracks to the monitor. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and grab our curve here, which is hidden inside of here. And then we're going to parent that to the circle and keep transform. And now when we grab this, we'll be able to move around our whole robot rig, and we can also move around the body so that we can make the body kind of bounce and bobble alongside without affecting the tracks. So now we need to duplicate our tracks to the other side. So we're going to grab this tank tread here, go into wireframe mode. Let's just grab the tank track 2, go to front view, and let's duplicate this to the other side of the monitor and just get something simple there. I'm just going to snap mine to the x-axis there. And that should be called tank track 001. And if we go back out here, we should be able to grab our circle and move everything around. So now we can move the position and we can move our monitor around, but we need to make sure that we can animate our tank tracks. So now we have our body set up to animate, and we have it so that we can animate the position of our robot, but we need to be able to animate these tank treads, and we actually already can. So what we can do is we can grab this tank tread, the object itself, not the curve, and if we move that on the Z axis there, on its local Z axis, we'll see that the tank treads animate. But what we're going to do is we're going to rig those so that they animate together. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab this tank tread here. We're going to add an object constraint of copy location. We're going to select this object over here. We're going to turn off our X and off our Y. Now when we grab this object over here and we move it on the Z, you can see that they move together at the same speed. So with that, we have our robot rig so that we can move them around and everything. And we'll get to the face rig in a second. But first, let's go into our side view. And let's go ahead and turn off our armature for now, which I'm also going to rename to robot rig. And let's just add a few little tank tracks in here. We'll go here. And these are just going to be kind of the sprockets and gears. So I'm just going to grab a cylinder. And shrink it down inside of there. Go back out to the front view. Just move this out here. I want it just to kind of intersect with the computer monitor a bit. We're going to come back out here to side view. So let's just snap into face mode. Let's grab that top face. Just inset that. We'll just extrude that in, inset it again, and then extrude that back out. Going to right click, hit shade smooth, go into here, turn on auto smooth, and then I'm just going to duplicate that a couple times, moving that on the Y axis and just kind of scaling it up so it touches the tank tracks. And this just kind of gives the illusion that there's little gears in there spinning. Go ahead, scale that one down a bit. Just going to select all of these and apply the scale. And there we go. Now we have little tank tracks. So we can just go ahead, grab these. Let's join those together so they're one object. We'll call these gears. We'll parent those to the circle. We'll rename that circle robot control. So let's just grab those, hit duplicate, rotate it on the Z axis 180 degrees. Then we're just going to move that to the other side here and kind of line that up with the other side. If you hit Control 3, you can switch to the alternating side view. And there we go. With that, we have our little monitor and our body set up. So now we're ready to move on to how to do the face rig. So to animate the face, we're actually going to need different face textures set up in kind of an image sequence like this. I've provided a link in the description below if you'd like to use the faces I've made for free. And I even have this little face guide that I've made. And with this little face guide, you'll be able to tell what numbers which face, which will make more sense later. It's also important to download this pixel matrix shader from CG Cody. I reached out to him while making this video and asked if we could use that shader, but it's a cool LCD screen shader that we'll be using to get that LCD look on the face. So back over here in Blender, we're going to go ahead and apply that shader to our face. So let's tab into our monitor here. We're going to hit L to select that glass piece, and we're going to hit H to hide it. Now we want to select these screen faces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch face selection mode, grab those faces there, and then I'm just going to hit Control plus because I actually want to get these little edges around here. So if you keep hitting Control plus, the selection will go back, and I'm going to go back to about there. Then what I'm going to do is come down here to the material tab. I'm going to create a new material, and then I'm going to assign this. Now this isn't the material we're using, but we're just assigning that slot. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File, Append, and locate the LCD screen shader that CG Cody provided. Once I've clicked that, I'll come in here into Material, and then I'm going to import this matrix display. So I'm going to hit Append, and then I'm going to switch over here and do Matrix Display. And then if I go into my Edit mode, where my screen is hidden, if I switch up here to Look Dev mode, we can see now that we have a screen effect here. And he's made all these controls here, so you can change the pixel gap, the roundness, the smoothness, the color of the face, and kind of the pixel size here. I think I'm going to move mine down to 0.00 3, make my pixels a little bit smaller. And then what you want to do to import your face texture is he's got this texture node here that he's hidden. And you can just import your faces here as an image texture. Now the way this works is it reads the alpha and then we'll draw that on here as a face. So he's got one here, we just don't have a UV map. So let's come over here, which hit select. We're going to create a new UV map down here. Let's just call this one face. We're going to hit Control I here and hit H, and that's going to hide the rest of our model. We'll switch to the edge selection mode. So what we need to do is just grab these edges back here. So I'm just going to Alt Shift click and click one of these ones right here, and that should grab all of them for an edge loop. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to here and I'm going to do edge, mark seam, and that'll be for our edge loop there and our UV map. After you've marked that edge, let's go ahead, select everything, hit unwrap. Make sure you have face selected down here. We're going to come back here to the UV map, change that to face, go into front view, tab back into our edit view. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to the UV editor. Then up here we're going to click matrix display. We're just going to rotate that -90 degrees. And we're going to move that around until we kind of get a satisfactory look. So to rig his face, we need to turn this into an image sequence. So I'm just going to use the faces that I provided in the link for free. So I've also imported this face guide here to show you an illustration of how to do this as a face rig. So first, once you have your image sequence in here, so here it's going to display how many frames you've inputted, which here it's set to 25, but what we're going to do is we're going to turn it down to 1. And now to change the face, we can just animate this offset here. So if I move this forward, you'll see that the face is changing every frame. Now, if you're not seeing the face updating, it's because you're not in render mode. You usually need to be in render mode to get the face to update every time you change up here. I went ahead and deleted the screen just to show you guys, but we're going to go ahead and add a glass shader to that screen soon. So to animate his face, all you need to do is to insert a keyframe on the offset. So let's press I, move forward a couple frames, go here, choose our number of face that we want there, press I again, and you'll notice that what it's going to do is scrub through all those faces in between. So what we can do is come over here to the graph editor, and after we're done animating our face, we can grab all those keyframes related to that offset, and we can just press T, and we can switch that to constant. And then that way it won't change the face until it gets to the next frame there. So that's kind of how you go about animating the face. Also, with this little cheat sheet down here, you can actually use this so that you know what number to hit to get what face you want. That way you're not just entering random numbers and guessing which face is coming next. And with that, we're ready to start shading our character. Now that our character is fully rigged, let's add some basic shaders. If you'd like to do more advanced textures, I'll post a link to my video at the end here showing you how to texture so that you can go ahead and add grunge and other things to the crevices or maybe dirt onto his tank tracks. So I'm going to hop up here to the shading tab and zoom in here on our little monitor. So I'm going to grab this, and we already have our matrix display for the little screen in there. And let's make this screen say body. And then we'll go in here and we will hit Alt H to unhide everything from before. We're going to press L over that screen to select it. We're going to hit new. We'll call this one screen. And then let's go ahead and I'm going to make this little button a different color. So I'm going to grab this face here and hit Control plus a couple times and add a new one, and we'll call this one button. Now let's come out here. Let's grab these cylinders here. Let's create a new material and call this gear. And then let's switch over here and add the gear material to those. Then let's grab these tank treads, hit new, we'll call this tread. And I'm just going to set these shaders up so that they work in Eevee, but they will also all work in cycles. And let's go ahead and let's start with our screen shader here. So I'm going to switch to EV rendered mode so that we can see what we're doing. So making sure we have the screen selected, we'll come down here, we'll delete this default node. And let's go ahead and let's add a glass, a mix shader, and a transparent node. And we will just mix these two together into our surface put. And then we'll see that we can't see through, so we need to come down here into the settings below the surface here, and we can change the blend mode to alpha blend, which will then give us a kind of screen glass that we can see through. Now we already have our matrix display set up. For the body, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, I'm going to turn the roughness down to 0.25 or so because I want this to kind of look like plastic. And then I don't want it to be white. I'm going to give it that kind of old Apple monitor off-white. So I'm just going to push it towards yellow just ever so slightly. And actually, let's up that roughness just a bit. Let's do 0.5 or maybe meet in between the middle and do 0.35. Now let's go ahead and let's grab this button. I want this to be a little emission there. So zoom in on the button here. And what we're going to do is actually just go ahead and delete this, add an emission node. I want this button to kind of look like it's glowing. So I'm just going to go ahead and give this just maybe a slight green button color there. And there you go. With that, we have our monitor textures. Let's move on over to the tread. I want the tread to kind of look like rubber. We can leave this default node on here. Let's go ahead, grab this, move it down to almost black, and then we're just going to crank the roughness all the way up. With these little gears, I want those to look metal, so I'm going to grab those, leave the default node, just turn metallic up. And I want them to look a little bit darker, so I'm going to grab that and kind of do that there. And I don't want them to be so shiny, so I'm going to turn that roughness up to 0.75 and actually drop the darkness down there a little bit more. And with that, we're ready to begin animating our little computer character. Thank you for watching my video. Please let me know what you think in the comments below and what you'd like to see in the future. If you are interested in these project files, again, they're available on my Patreon, which you can find in the description below. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, right. As I mentioned before, there's actually another texturing video I did here that you can use to kind of add a little bit of extra flair to your little robot if you want to. Share what you did in the comments below or tag me in your work on Instagram. Thanks again for watching.